Hey, Shalom. Glad you made it. Let's just see who's in the room. I changed my setup a bit, so hopefully this will be better. We'll see. Shalom to Vicky, Enrique, Brenda, Troy, Betty, Elizabeth, and Julie. Those are the ones who are in the actual chat right now. Thanks for being on time. I appreciate it. Let's just say a real quick opening prayer. Avinu Shabashamayim. Ein lama moshio magen b'litecha. Ken hi ratzon ki halayl hazot. רוח הקודש שלך יחיה, תחיה איתנו. בי אדוני, תמלא את פי, כי אני יכול לדבר רק כי אתה רוצה. לעולם ולעולם ולך יחיה כל הכבוד. All right. Hey, Shalom, Mentat Assassin and Pastor Bruce. Glad you guys are here. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Tonight we are continuing in our study of Psalm 119. We will be dealing with the Vav couplets or the Wow couplets, right? Um, if you're just coming in, if you weren't part of our immersion study for the previous couplets, that's fine. This is continuing our immersion study. So on Mondays, we have Exodus in a graphic novel, the original Hebrew. We're working through it for all levels of Hebrew learners. Tuesday, we also have Exodus. We continue. Wednesday, we have First Kings in a different graphic novel. Again, a Hebrew graphic novel. And then, but it's the original text. It's not like they made the text shorter or something like that. And then on Thursdays, that's today, we're going through Psalms, right? And right now it's Psalms and wisdom literature. So tonight we're continuing the longest chapter in the Bible, which is Psalm 119. Okay. And the way the Psalm works is it's organized that every 8 verses, it starts with every verse of those 8 verse couplets start with one of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. It's an acrostic. And it works its way through the whole alphabet, right? So the first time we studied, we did all the 8 verses that start with Aleph, right? The next week was Beit, and then Gimel, Dalet, Hey, and here we are with Vav. So we are progressing through the Psalm. All right. Let's just go ahead and make some adjustments real quickly. Okay. All right. So that means we will be on verse 41. See, so here's the end of last week's couplets. Right? You see this one right here. It's starting with a hey, right? They all started with hey. Hey, hey, etc. Hey, hey, hey. Sorry, I had to get Fat Albert in there. And then we continue through and we're done. And so here is verse right here, verse Mem Aleph, right? So that's 41. And that is going to start right where my head is. So let me get out of the way. All right. And it says, Ve'e'anei chorefi. So the verb ana, ayin nun hey, excuse me, means to answer. Oh, hold on. I don't have the chat up. Let me make sure I can see your chats. Shalom. Okay, good. Hey, Shalom Yakar. And Shalom Steven. All right, from Minnesota. Nice. So the verb, we've had this a few times before. Where am I? Hey, I look at the book and then I look at the screen, confused. Ayin, ayin, noon, hey means to answer. Although in some rare scriptures, some rare books, it can have the meaning to sing, sometimes to sing, but some say that's ana number 4. But anyway, so ana is to answer. And look, we've sandwiched an aleph in front of it. So what does that mean when we prepend an aleph in front of the verb? The aleph is your mental clue for the aleph in ani or anochi. They both start with aleph and they both mean I. Okay, so I will answer. Ve'ene. Then I will answer chorefi. So choref is like someone who disgraces you, right? Who shames you, right? So maybe like a taunter, a disgracer, something like that. And the e at the end means mine. So the choref, the disgracer, the taunter, the defamer of me, right? So then I will answer my taunter, my disgracer, davar, a word. A word, please. Ki vatachti bidvarecha. Ki, for, vatachti. Maybe this is we'll treat this like he, okay. In poetry, oftentimes ki operates like an exclamation point. So it's not always for or that, or the other syntactic uses like when, etc. Um, and it seems like it makes sense here. So indeed, vatach. So batach is to trust. This is where we get the word betachon. You guys have heard me a lot in the past talking about emunah and betachon, faith and confidence, right? Like when you have faith for long enough, you've been operating in faith, you've been hithalech, you've been walking, mithalech, pardon me, walking back and forth in be'emunah, in faith, you start to fill up your gas tank with betachon. And when something hard happens, it's easier for you because you have confidence in Hashem. We have that confidence, right? And then they start to feed back and forth. Having the confidence, you've filled up your gas tank with confidence, and now the betachon, the confidence, it feeds back into emunah, and then they you get stronger and stronger both ways, right? Working into each other. So sorry, I keep moving the yad when I'm looking at you guys. So batach is to trust. That's the root of confidence. Patach T, when you see that E at the end of a verb, it reminds us of the E at the end of the word ani or anochi, right? So if you have the word, I wish I could write on that screen. Yeah, if I did in PowerPoint, I could. Okay, that's fine. Um, but maybe I'll do it to show you guys. I think it's worth it. Let me want to make sure you're getting the mnemonic fully. All right. All right. So now I'm in PowerPoint, so I should be able to write. Ah, I had my stylus down. There it is. Hallelujah. All right, all right. Okay. We'll pull a Dr. Dwayne. We're going to write on the screen, all right? I know Dr. Dwayne likes to do that. That's good. Let me just make it a little bit easier for me to. It's at a weird angle, so let's see. Nope, that didn't. Oh, it's on the wrong screen. Okay, it's the little guy. All right, okay, okay, okay. Ah, it's not going to work. I'm projecting to a screen that I can't write on. Okay, I'll get that figured out sometimes for you guys. Sorry, my bad. All right. Well, what I wanted to say was let's take the short version for I. Ani. It's Aleph. Wait, see if I can do this mirror image. Noon and then Yod. Right. So the Aleph is at the beginning. So if you're dealing with a word with a verb like this one, anet to answer, and the Aleph is at the beginning of the word, then think of the letter that's at the beginning of ani, which is Aleph. But if we're looking at a verb rather, that has yod at the end of the verb, then think of the end of the word ani, right? So Aleph at the beginning, yod at the end, just like the word ani is spelled with an Aleph at the beginning and a yod at the end. Okay, so I made up this mnemonic and this way of thinking, so I don't know if it's useful or not. Maybe you guys let me know if that you're finding that helpful or not. Brandon says, the progression of faith into trust, into confidence. Yes, exactly. Okay, so batachti, I have indeed trusted. The key is, I'm going to translate that as a emphatic key. Bidvarecha. Be is in, devar is word, cha is yours. In your word. I skipped a verse. Oops. My eyes just looked up and so wait, there's a Vav. I'm sorry. This was 42. Back to 41. All right, so we started with 42. Nobody caught me. All right, my bad. All right. Let's read verse 41 now, because usually it's kind of rare that the verse starts right on the thing, but we had this big white space here, so I should have been aware of that. Sorry, guys. I was kind of rushing tonight. Things got delayed. I was sitting here in my studio eating my soup real quick. Okay, here we go. So, vivo uni chasadecha Adonai teshuatecha keimratecha. Okay. The verb here is ba. The yod tells you he. And the oo that the Masoret's added tells you they. Though the BHS tells us this is going to be a singular, so whether the oo is there or not, they might be wrong, right? They might be wrong. Thanks for the no worries, Brenda. Okay, so yevo oo from ba to come or to arrive means they are coming or they will come. All right. The vav is and it may or may not be negating, changing the time here. It's much more flexible in poetry. And then the ni at the end is me. Think of ani. That's like the whole end of it, like the second and the third letter, ni. Okay. So they bring, pardon me, they come to me. Who comes to me? Chasadecha. Your kindnesses, O Adonai. And now we're going to see what are his kindnesses? What are this pool of kindnesses? Teshuatecha, the Teshua, which is a synonym for Yeshua, your salvation, right? The Teshua of Cha. The Tav is of. So the word is Teshua, just like we have Yeshua, ending in a He. And when you have a noun that is feminine, usually it's going to end in a He. But if it changes to a Tav, like here, that means of. So think of it like this: Teshua, salvation or victory. Tav, of Cha, of you. Okay. Ke'imratecha, your kindnesses. Chasadecha. Shalom, my Hebrew mentor. Your kindnesses. Chasadecha, the Cha. Yeah, for yours, Achi. O Adonai Teshuatecha, your salvation, your victory. Ke, according to. So kaf, when you have it by itself, well, it can't stand alone. There's a different form it takes if it's going to stand alone called kamo. So we fix it to the word, and it means like or as, right? Or according to. Imra, Imra is an utterance, right? It's a synonym, typically synonym to davar. And so you can see the psalmist, because I jumped a verse by accident, the psalmist, he's going to use davar here. So he doesn't want to use it here for his style. So instead he uses imra, right? Davar, it's related to diber, to speak, which the sages teach us is a little bit harsher, a little bit stronger. When we're talking about mitzvot, they're usually given by diber, this verb. And imra, it's from the verb amar, which is to say, right? So again, related. But an imra is oftentimes used in poetry, right? And the nuance can be slightly different. Both of these words in context can mean promise, right? So I'm going to go with Mitchell Dahoud's commentary where he suggests using promise here. Okay, so according to Imra, the promise, and then we have a tav of cha, of you, according to your promise. So the teshua and the Imra, those are examples of his chasadim. Okay. Yeah, okay. My Hebrew, shalom. My Hebrew mentor asked where's the plural ending. Yeah, you're right. It is actually technically a singular here. But when we have abstract concepts, if there's justification to translate it as a plural, then we can. And since we have an enumeration here, I went with plural. And I think the BHS even indicates that Septuagint translates this as a plural. So, yeah, I should have explained that. Thank you for putting my feet to the fire there. My Hebrew mentor, very good. Yeah, so technically, what's happening here, I'll go ahead and talk about it more because it's coming up. This is a singular. We would expect there to be a schwa here, but it has extended to segol. All right, good. Probably because it's conjunctive closure to the etnachta, right? Okay. And you'll note that the tetragrammaton doesn't have the vowels on it at all. Yeah, sure. Nice question, Achi. Thank you. Okay, so now we have the verse that I translated already out of order. So I'll just read through it. "Ve'anecho lefi davar ki vatachti bidvarecha." Okay, we translated that already. So let's go on to verse. Maybe I'll go ahead and since we're out of order. Then I will answer my those who would disgrace me, my disgracers or my taunters, davar, a word. I will answer them a word. Kivatachti, for I have trusted, or indeed, we're going to go with this as a key emphaticum. I have trusted bidvarecha, in your word. And again, same thing happening here. The siluk is causing the schwa to lengthen into a short vowel, to a segol, in case you're wondering about that. Any advanced students who are here? I think we have some advanced students here, so maybe I'll give some more of that stuff. Okay, verse Mem Gimel, which is 43. Ve'al tatzel mipi devar emet. Ad, and we'll stop there because I'm going to have to shift the page, right? Ve, again, the vav can mean lots of things. So I'll just be hyper literal and say and for now. And al, do not. This is a softer way to say not. Oftentimes it presents itself with an imperfect verb like we have here. So remember, you know already lo, right? Meaning not, as in the Aseret Devarot, lo tegnov, lo tietzach, thou shalt not, etc. But here the psalmist is speaking to God, and he's going to use a softer form. And if you look at it, it's low backwards. That's kind of a way, if you don't know the word, to recognize it. It's softer. It's usually paired with an imperfect. So the al and do not tatzel. The verb here is a little bit difficult to recognize. It's actually natsal. Natsal. It's a pay noon verb, meaning a verb that starts with a noon. And as we've discussed quite a few times, verbs that start with noon, oftentimes that noon will disappear. And that's exactly what's happening here. The noon has disappeared. Technically, it's assimilated in the tzad. You see the dagesh, the dot? He's saying, hey, there's a noon hiding out over here. Have a look. All right. And when you see the tav at the beginning of a verb, that reminds us of what? The ta reminds us of atta, you. Okay. So you will not sal. Technically, natsal, the basic meaning is to snatch up, right? It can also mean to rescue, like metaphorically, but I don't think that's what it means here. Let's move forward a bit. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So like remove, right? So al tatsel, do not snatch up, do not take away me p. So here is me, meaning from, and hold on, for some reason my chat comments are gone. Mi, we know the word min is from, and that noon likes to assimilate. So that's why there's a dagesh in the pay there, right? He's assimilated in. Mipi, it typically in ancient times would be pronounced as two pes there. Although going with the Sephardic Israeli pronunciation, we'll just kind of go through that, brush through that. Mipi. So this is the word pe, mouth, with the yod at the end that reminds you of mine, right? If you haven't done your suffixes, your pronominal suffixes yet, please check those out on my playlist in the language snippets. I have a little video that can help you to memorize those. That will help a lot as we are becoming language detectives and breaking apart what we see in the text here. Okay, so mipi, from my mouth, devar emet. I want to say a faithful word. Literally, it's davar became devar. It's word of emet, of truth, right? But emet oftentimes has a nuance of fidelity, right? So that's why to me it feels like a faithful word, but we can be just literal. A word of truth. Do not remove, do not snatch away from my lips. Devar emet, a faithful word or a word of truth. Ad, until, and we've had ad. Make sure you're doing your vocabulary word every day, all right? So that this will be much easier for you. Okay, now we have to move to the next page. Okay, let me give me a moment to work this out. And you'll notice no graphic novel. I haven't found a really nice illustrated Hebrew Psalms to use. If anybody knows of one, some of them they have nice pictures, they're illustrated and stuff, illuminated, I think they call it. But all the ones that I could find, they also had English in it. And so I don't know. If anybody knows of one, let me know. Or if you want to gift our ministry one, that would be nice. We're over here in the Philippines. All right. me'od. This is going to be difficult to show. Okay, we'll just be literal for now. Ad me'od is like continuously or eternally, but um, it's again. I'm going to defer to the amazing commentary by the late Mitchell Dahoud, his 3 volume commentary on the grammar of the Psalter, where he suggests that this much canvassed term should also be like we treated it back in verse 8. It's actually not ad me'od, but ad ma'ed, which means eternal great one, something like this, like everlasting great one, eternal great one, as a divine epithet for God. So I like that. You don't have to do it that way. We can stick with how the Masoretes pointed it, but it's nice and it works anyway. So it's up to you. A lot of times, poetry translation, there are going to be elements where we're not exactly sure where to go with it. Hi lemishpatecha yichaleti. For, or because, or this might even be emphatic, like we had in the previous verse. Lemishpatecha, by your mishpatim, by your judgments, yichalati, I have waited. You can also kind of have the nuance of hoped as well. All right. You guys are kind of quiet over there in the chat. Feel free to ask questions. No question is too basic. I know a lot of you have just learned to read recently and you're working on reading. That's great. Stick with it. You're going to get there. I think immersion is really the way to go, especially for practicing reading. And don't worry if you feel your question is something I've talked about before. It's okay to bring it up because there's a lot of levels of students in here. There's a lot of people will have questions as well. If you ask it, chances are 10 other people want to know it too. Wow, we have a low turnout tonight. Yeah, anyway, I don't know. Maybe people. Usually the Psalm night is the more popular. Verse Mem Dalet, that's 44. Ve'eshmera Toratecha tamid le'olam va'ed. So the verb here, shama, many of you know shama, right? So shama is safeguard. Kathy was just talking about it in Messianic chat earlier today, or maybe it was last night, her time. I'm not sure. Maybe in a second, okay, my Hebrew mentor. So Shema is to safeguard, to keep, to protect. Uh, this is one reason that when we look at the commandment to keep the Sabbath, that the idea is to safeguard it, right? We protect it. So the olive sandwiched in there means I or Anochi. It should remind you from Ani or Anochi. But look, we have an extra hey at the end here. So this hey is, some consider this an emphatic hey. Although if you want to Google in the grammar, others would call this a cohortative, this form here. It's like, let me do it. May it be that I will do it. Right? If you don't have the hey on the end, if it would just say eshmol if there was no hey, and that would be I will safeguard. I will keep, I will protect. Putting the hey on the end makes it like, let me do it, or may it be that I will do it. Okay? The vav here, I'm thinking this is probably a vav emphaticum. It's like making it even stronger since we already have the hey for strengthening, and we don't need to say and here, right? Now I'm going to answer, let's see, my Hebrew mentor has the question, could you talk about the use of meteg in yichalati? Sure. So this here is what he's talking about, right? And it's actually not a meteg here, it's a siluk, right? So it looks just like a Meteg. So I can understand why you'd be confused about that. They look just the same, but yeah, it's just it's not in this case. So it's a ta'am, which is a sense sign, right? It kind of gives us an extra sense to what's happening with the verse, how much pause to put. And the reason this is here is because the Masoretes, when they had this psalm memorized, they gave it an extra oomph, the word that was at the end of the verse, right? We also often have the same thing happening with the et nachta. We'll also get a lengthening that happens there. But in this case, it's already a O, so we don't need to lengthen it. So this would have been a shorter vowel here. We would have expected patach, but instead it's lengthened to kama. It's because of the saluk. Now, again, if that's too advanced for you guys, I'm just trying to answer the question here in the chat. Yeah, so don't, yeah, yeah, okay, sure. You like, okay, good. Yeah, my Hebrew mentor says, ah, yes, Dinatzi is at the Sof Pasuk. Sof Pasuk means the last of the verse, the end of the verse. Good. Pastor Bruce says, don't forget to like. Yes, listen to Pastor Bruce, please. And Shalom, Davy. Glad you made it. Great, great. Yeah, a little sad the turnout tonight, but that's all right. Especially since I didn't eat dinner with the family, so I could be with you guys. All right, so here we are, verse 44. I'm sorry, we were there already. I got distracted with our other question. Okay, then, or may it be that I will keep indeed Torah. Okay, so Torah, you know Torah, right? And as I mentioned before, when you have a noun that ends in a ah sound, and you want to say of, we put a tav, we change that ah to a tav. So Torah, interestingly enough, in Arabic, it's still Torah to this day, right? Torah. But Torah, the Torah of cha, of you. So your Torah, right? Because it sounds weird in English to say it the other way. Tamid, continuously. Dahoud suggests that this is perpetual one, but I think I don't think I've ever seen this elsewhere to be a a a divine title. So I'm just going to stay with the normal meaning, continual, perpetual, perpetually, pardon me, as an adverb. Le'olam va'ed, forever and ever. How long will the psalmist keep the Torah? Forever and ever. Brenda says, haha, we are here with you, Rob. Yes, the faithful. Glad you guys are here. I just realized I can be a bit bigger here, too. I'm not going to block out the text anymore. Bear with me while I get a drink real quick, okay? I just thanks. I really hope that wasn't audible in the microphone. Okay, so now we just finished verse 44 here. Now we have Mem Hey 45. The et halecha. Let's just stop there for a second. So, how many of you recognize the root here? It's kind of rhetorical because we have like a 7-second delay. So, go ahead and answer. I'll give the answer because I don't want to like cause too much of a delay. And let's see, how long are we recording so far? Let me see. It's I have it on a smaller screen, so it's harder for me to tell. Okay, we're making good time. So halach, right? Halach was one of your words of the day. Remember, halach, halach, or halach. Two different signs for that. Halach is to go, right? Now, when you see a verb prefixed with something that sounds like it, mit, hit, yit, you've got that tav sound at the end. This is what we call the Hitpael verbal form, right? The Hitpael binyan in Jewish dikduk. And if you're curious, if you looked at if you haven't looked at this and you're curious about the different verbal forms, you don't have to yet since we're doing immersion, right? But if you're curious, check out my language snippets playlist and you'll see there's a picture of a menorah there. And it's a real nice mnemonic for memorizing that. Okay. I didn't come up with the menorah idea, but that's so common. I don't even know who to give credit to for that. So I did make the animations though. And anyway, in the middle branch of the menorah, on the one side we have all the active forms. On the other side we have the passives that are similar, right? Like one branch will go the other side. It's really a nice way to memorize, and you can see the orthogonality of the Hebrew verbal system. And then the very middle branch, it's not active or passive necessarily. It's reflexive, to do to oneself, usually, right? So it halacha Italech, actually. Just italech means I will walk around or walk to and fro, walk back and forth, right? When you have verbs of motion, it's not exactly to do to yourself. It's not like I will make myself walk. It changes a bit there, right? Um, we see this used with the Satan when in the book of Eov, Elohim asks him, what have you been up to? And he says, oh, he says, he uses this verb, hitalaching. I've been walking back and forth in the earth, right? And swerving all around, right? Um, Yeah, we see this with regard to Enoch, that he walked with God. When it says he walked with God, it's really this, he walked around with God, right? That it's the same verbal form, the hitpael, right? So it implies like a deeper following than just walking with him, just halach. So here, The psalmist is saying that's what he wants to do. I want to it halach. But actually, here we have a hey at the end. That's is again, it makes it stronger. It's like emphatic, the emphatic hey. Or if you're familiar with the cohortative, that's fine. It means like, may it be that I will do this, right? So I'm going to treat again the vav as a vav emphaticum here. So may it be that I will walk around. Va vechava. So va, the bait means in. A is the. Rechava, it comes from rachov, which means like breadth or wide, like width, something like that, right? We have in another psalm the merchav, the broad domain, right? And there's oftentimes a concept of freedom juxtaposed, like liberty juxtaposed with imprisonment, right? Last time, yesterday in First Kings, we discussed sarar, right? To be in a difficult spot, right? Or it was actually a Heathel form with Lamed. So to harass in that case, right? Someone's putting you in a difficult spot, an enemy's harassing you. I believe Brenda suggested besieging a city, right? Like this, all very good examples. And we have related to that the problem, the idea, the word for problems, right? Which is to be in a tight spot. The opposite is to be in an open space, right? So this might again be referencing the broad domain, like Hashem's broad domain. The psalmist might be taking it beyond the literal here and now, meaning as a result of being of of that I might safeguard your Torah continuously forever and ever. The result, so that et halachava chava, that I might walk around in the broad domain. Now, it might just be talking about the concept of freedom in general, that I will be unrestrained in this life as the result of safeguarding God's Torah. The result would be long life and all of these sorts of things, right? As we have the fifth commandment, kibed avicha v'timecha, honor your father and mother. Why? So that your days will be lengthened, right? So the result of keeping the Torah should be long life. So either way, he could be kind of dipping into the kind of ethereal afterlife aspect, the broad domain, versus Sheol and Hades, being very constrained, not being able to choose where you're going. Or it could just be in this life, right? Okay. Yes, that's right. Vicky says, Hitpael, exactly right. Julie says, can halach mean go and walk? Yes. For example, Torah portion Lech Lecha, right? God speaks to Avram and he says, Lech, go, Lech, go. Go lecha for yourself. They sound similar, but they're different words, yeah? So exactly, that's go. We usually translate that as go, not walk. But that's because the verb halach, it means to walk, but it also means go, either one, right? You don't have to be halaching, necessarily focusing on walking. It's funny, Russian does the same thing. Iti and chadit. Если есть люди здесь, которые говорят по-русски, это то же самое. Iti и chadit. It's the same thing in Russian, right? We have different verbs in Russian for to walk, but then we have other words if you're going to travel like by means of a horse or something, right? Or an airplane, or if you're swimming, everything is different, right? So, okay. Sorry, you activated the inner Russian. Brenda says, I'm not that insightful. Sure, you are. You make a lot of good points, Brenda. Very often. Let me just check on our time, though, so I can pace myself. How much I rabbit trail. Okay, I think we're still all right. Yeah, we're still fine. We're still fine. Okay, so let's continue on. Thanks for commenting, guys. Aki fikudecha darashti. Okay. Pardon me, darashti. Okay. See, I did the same thing there that you were talking about, my Hebrew mentor. I looked at it as a Meteg also. Did you see that? Meteg. It got me also. It got you on the previous one. It got me on this one. So because the Meteg looks just like the. By the way, in case you guys don't know what a Meteg is, Meteg, it means bridle, like a horse's bridle, or the bit, the thing that goes in the mouth, right? And it like makes you pause a little bit, right? So if you saw what I did there, I misread the word at first. I said darashati. I made it a vocal schwa because I was looking at that as a meteg, in which case this would like have space like it's beginning a syllable. It's not. It's a siluk. It's just the accent. Darashti. Good. He for fikudecha. So this is from pikudim, which is like an enumerated list, right? Regulations, I think we settled on the last time we came up on this word in this study, right? You guys liked regulations. So it's like a enumerated list of kinds of commands, right? Which is interesting with the Hebrew parallelism. We just had Torah, right? Torah techa, your law up here, your Torah. And now we have your pikudim, your enumerated commands, right? Your regulations. Darashti. Darash is, well, you guys probably know this even if you don't remember it already. What is the Jewish hermeneutic that we usually apply to scripture, right? Pardes, right? Pardes. The peh is for peshat. The plain meaning is the most powerful, right? And the Chafetz Chaim says in his book Meditations of the Heart that no one will ever be judged poorly for keeping the peshat meaning of the text, right? Keeping the plain meaning of the Bible, right? And then after peshat, the next level is the remez, which is a hint, right? A hint, like it's hinting about something deeper, right? And then we have the here we are the drash, right? The seeking, you're looking for it, right? And then finally, sod. I almost never go into sod, right? Because it's so esoteric. It's interesting, but it's kind of like, for me, about the deepest I ever go is remez. Usually Peshat, sometimes remez, like when you have a prophecy that has a deeper fulfillment that's going to happen later. So that could be remez or darash, right? For example, like the virgin birth or something, right? This could be an example of going deeper to remez or darash, right? To get that. Good, good. My Hebrew mentor agrees. Yeah. Don't feel bad. It got us both. Okay, good. Um, and then the E at the end, that should remind you of the end of ani, right? I. So darashti, I sought out. But it almost feels to me like I seek, right? Because we have ve'et halacha, may I walk around in the broad domain for your regulations. I sought. It feels to me like it should be more like I seek. It might not be. It is a perfect, which usually we put in the past, either the past or we treat it like a, not this form, but you can have a precative perfect, which is like a soft command in poetry. But yeah, it just feels that way to me. I'm just saying. I'm not saying we'll be nice. We'll put it in the past. Okay, verse Memvav 46. Va'adaberach ve'edotecha neged melachim. Sorry if I read a bit quicker there. I was thinking about the time. Okay, so adaber by itself, adaber means I will speak, right? And if you didn't know this verb, you do know davar already. Sorry, it's on the previous page, so I can't just put it up there. Davar is word. We've had this as one of our words of the day, so you need to know this one. The aleph, that reminds you again of ani or anochi. Adaber means I will speak. Okay? The hey at the end makes it what we call the cohortative, right? May it be that I will speak. It's something like that, but that's just two words in English. So let me speak. But that also sounds like you're asking a question, right? You're telling someone's not letting you speak. So it's just making it stronger. Like, may it be that I will speak. Now the Vav is doing something weird. Does anybody know why there's a Patach here under the Vav? What's going on there? Maybe I'll give a few seconds while I drink some water to see if anybody has the. I know someone will have the answer. Let's just see. All right, I'm going to go ahead and answer. And if somebody says it, there's a delay, I'll still give you credit, okay? So what's happening here, this is more intermediate or advanced, so don't feel bad if this is uninteresting, just let it wash over you. Yeah, exactly. My Hebrew mentor says tenses are more fluid in Tehillim. Totally true. So what we have here is you can't start a word with two schwas in a row. Okay, so usually you want to have the vav with a schwa under it, that little colon thing. Okay, but the aleph already has what we call a composite schwa. It's a kind of schwa. Okay, so instead of lengthening it to something else, we copy the vowel sound here. This is because aleph is a guttural, and gutturals don't take vocal schwas. Instead, they resort to a composite, a composite patach or composite segol. Okay, kata patach or kata segol. So that's why it's there. Okay. So I think it's probably emphatic. Oh, that I might speak the edotecha with the edut. So this is the testimonies, which refers to abstractly the Ten Commandments, right? The edut, there's the same word in Akkadian, and I learned this from Dr. Michael Heiser, my Ugaritic teacher, and may he rest in peace. And this Edut in Akkadian actually means witnesses, right? So it's kind of interesting. So when the Ten Commandments were given in ancient Near East, the pagan cultures, they would have each person making such a treaty list all the gods that they believed in, right? You had to list them all. The idea was that if you then broke the treaty later, you didn't have any gods left that you could appeal to, right? Well, this would be crazy for the ancient Israelis, right? Because monotheism. So instead, here the Elohim, the witnesses weren't gods, but they were the angelic host, the heavenly host, right? Elohim can have that nuance of members of the spiritual realm, right? And so the Ten Commandments, as our ketubah, our marriage contract with God, which we celebrated just now for Shavuot, they also represented that there were witnesses, the heavenly witnesses, all the angelic host, the celestial beings which Hashem had created were there witnessing that we agreed and we accepted the Ten Commandments. Okay. So sometimes it's called a pact, right? Anyway, so edotecha, your um, testimonies, I'm going to say. Okay. But there might be a better word for that. Anybody feel free to suggest a better English word for that. Ah, yeah, Yakar got the answer up above. That's right. And so did Vicky. Great. Sorry, I wasn't looking. That's right. Good job, ladies. Vicky and Yakar both got it right with the why the Chataf Patach affected a Patach here. Neged Melachim. Before, and Neged has a feeling, it's not like Lifnei, it has a feeling of like you're situated facing them, kind of opposite to them. So Neged Melachim, this is the word that's used when Yitzhak Avinu is praying for Rivka, right? When he Vaye'atar, he makes an atar, which is like a very strong prayer that she might become pregnant, right? It goes back to we have evidences in Old Southern Arabic that that word had to do with slaughtering a sacrifice, right? Although by the time we get to biblical Hebrew, it's like I think usually they translate that like to entreat Hashem, but it's got this idea of like a very strong, dedicated prayer. And he was neged Rivka. He was across from her, facing her like this. So across from Melachim, kings. And you had a Hebrew word of the day way back. I mean, we're in 60 something now, but when we started the Hebrew word of the day, we had Melech, right? Melech, which is king. This is the plural, Melachim. Velo Evosh, and not Avosh, I will be embarrassed. I will be ashamed, and I will not be ashamed. Okay. Okay. Gonna pick up the pace a little bit. Verse Mem Zayin, we might go to 50 minutes, 5 minutes late today. Sorry, guys. Ve'esh ta'asha b'mitzvotecha asher ahavti. Got to write that down. Okay. This is an interesting form. Okay. The aleph in the front is, I'm not going to go into the binyan here, but you can see there's actually some repetition, right? The sheen ayin, okay? So this is like to delight, to delight. There's actually a noun that comes from it too. The aleph reminds us of I, the esh shah, and I will delight myself. And actually, what's happening here, by the way, I'll talk about it a little bit. I didn't want to get too much into it because time, but the tav is is actually over here. Okay, it would have been et shah, and they actually metathesized. Okay, I will delight myself. I will delight be with or by means of mitzvotecha. So mitzvah, we had that mitzvah, right? Mitzvah was command, right? A command, and the cha is yours, and the yod tells us it's plural. So with your commandments or by means of your commandments, hey shalom Sabina, asher which ahavti, I love. And it's a perfect, but usually the idea with ahav, it's very similar to yada, yeah, verbs of feeling and of knowing, like if you once did, then you still do, right? So we can say, which I love, not I loved what he's dead or something. Okay, verse mem chet, ve'esach pai el mitzvotecha asher ahavti ve'asicha ve'chukecha. Okay, this verb a little hard to recognize. The hint is the dagesh in the scene. The verb is nasa, and we had this as a word of the day recently. I showed the rocket going up, right? NASA likes to carry, to bear things, right? To lift up. Okay, so the noon from nasa has assimilated. It went inside. In ancient Hebrew, this would have been a theoretical en-sa, and it became essa. Just like our illegal became illegal with two L's in English. The aleph is I, the essa, and I will lift up chapai. Chapai. Remember, kaf, it's almost like if you shape a kaf with your hand. It's not just the palm, it's also the underparts, right? And this is spiritually significant. This It was believed that this is where the guilt would rest on a person or the innocence in their kafs. And also, we have the same word for the soles of the feet, but it also includes the under the toes part, right? If you remember, even the dogs would not eat the gogelet, the skull, or the kapeha of Jezebel, right? Because that's where all the guilt was. Even the dogs, it's very symbolic, they didn't want to eat it. But here, the psalmist is saying, I will lift up my, it's chapayim. We drop the mem, and when you drop that mem, it means of, right? So I'm just going to say palms. It's close approximation in English. My palms, the palms of Yod, of me. El unto mitzvotecha, unto your commandments. Asher which, ahavti, I love. And the BHS suggests to delete this. They think it's a derogatory that what happened was the Masoretes or whoever, whichever Sofer was doing this, he deleted this. He accidentally wrote the same thing twice, like maybe it was a line, Asher hafti, but I don't think so. Poetry does this sometimes, and I'm very, very reticent to delete things from the consonantal text. Ve'asicha, and let me muse, let me consider, let me think about what? Ve'chukotecha, your statutes is how that's usually translated. But if you remember, this is the chukim, and the chukim and the chukot. These are the kinds of mitzvot that God tells us to do, but He doesn't tell us why. Right? Honoring your father and mother, that's a mitzvah. He gives us the reason why. Your days will be lengthened, and you'll live long in the land. Right? But certain ones, He doesn't tell us why. Don't wear shatnez, the kind of mixed garments. Right? We don't know why. Technically, kashrut is these are chukim. People say, oh, well, it's healthy, blah, blah, blah. Well, um, organic pork is supposed to be healthy as well, right? So it's not all about health, right? So we're really not sure why those things imparted impurity, why they impart impurity, right? So anyway, so by the chukim of you, and there we are. We are at 47 minutes. I went 2 minutes long. You see, I picked up the pace a little bit for you guys. Let's say, let's see. Pastor Bruce says, "Yay, read ahead, one word, laughing out loud." Good job. Bruce just learned to read Hebrew recently, so that's great. Good job. Yep. My Hebrew mentor says, "Could you compare my hand versus my hands?" Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's a interesting. So you don't mean in the psalm, you just mean in general, right? Yeah. So usually we see it as yadai. Yadai would be my hands, right? So human body parts that occur in twos, we like to put them in the plural. If you say my hand in the singular, my Hebrew mentor, what that does is usually this means like my portion, right? It's like what one hand could scoop up is the metaphor, right? Like what you, similar to kopsi, right? My grasp. So yadi is similar, right? It can also mean more metaphorical. When it's singular like that, my authority, my power, right? But if you say yadai, then we're usually talking about the actual hands, right? Because they occur. Even if you had a three-armed monster, right? In biblical Hebrew, he would have three. It'd still be yadayim. It's still the dual ending, right? So hope that answered the question. Okay, that's an interesting question. Brenda says, "Is the Masoretic text the only text that the Tanakh is translated from?" So that's a great question. So we do have the Dead Sea Scrolls, and actually there's this psalm. A lot of it has survived in the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Qumran discovery. So sometimes we look to that. When I did my translation of Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, I leaned also on pretty heavily on the Septuagint, right? So the Greek Jewish translation, because oftentimes we have different nuances, as I've been sharing with you guys, that the Hebrew words can have. And I wanted to see how the ancient translators brought that into Greek. That's what's real nice. And also the Targums. We look at the Targumim, Onkelos for the Torah, and Yonatan for the Nach, right? So we do look at different translations to see, not English translations, but different, we call them the ancient versions, right? To see because it's closer to the time period, right? Biblical Hebrew is not what's alive today; it's modern Hebrew, which is quite different, right? So to try to get back as close as we can, it's very interesting to look at those languages. So usually biblical translators, even translating from the Tanakh, will need to know Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, a couple different dialects of Aramaic, usually depending what you're working with, and some will even look at the Vulgate to see how did they do that, right? So, and Dead Sea Scrolls when available, right? When available, excellent. It's from a different scribal tradition than the Masoretic text is. So very nice thing to look at. Okay, I'm not seeing what you're saying there, my Hebrew mentor. In which verse? I think maybe we're gonna have to take the. Well, let me see. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna disconnect from the video so people feel they can do. I usually try to keep it 45 minutes, and then we keep the chat going live. So I'll continue the chat with you live, but I'm going to end the actual video, okay, just so that people can we can keep it close to 45 minutes. All right, shalom, shalom. Please don't forget to like, and the chat will continue